What's up, guys, and welcome to Stories That Scale. This is our podcasting segment on the YouTube channel where we're talking to business owners. Some of these business owners have been influential in me starting my business, especially early on in the beginning days, like Bill here. So we're here to learn about their story and how it's scaled or how it's going, whether it's a new business or a business that has some longevity and some maturity. So that way you, as new business owners, can maybe gather some tools and tips that you can use in your journey. So, hey, Bill.
Hello.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Can you tell us about your business? Like, what's it called? What do you guys do?
Yeah, happy to. So the company is called TechnoAid, which is we're based here in Nashville, Tennessee. Mm-hmm. Company is 47 years old. Has been in Nashville the whole time. We are an accessories company for healthcare. We are a healthcare accessories supplies manufacturer.
Okay.
Class 1 medical devices, super interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Everything that every little boy dreams about growing up to do is
You've always dreamed of selling this.
Class 1 medical devices.
Yeah.
Specifically, it's accessories for medical imaging, the X-ray industry. So if you think about all the little things that are in and around X-ray and medical imaging, so because X-ray is the more kind of familiar term, but there's a lot of other things that are involved in that medically speaking. And so protective apparel, positioning devices for patients.
Okay.
And so that's what we do. So kind of all the things that are in and around medical imaging, except the imaging equipment.
Gotcha.
Itself. That's kind of what we do.
Okay, you've already kind of hit on this note. Maybe not exactly every young man's dream to get into this business.
I don't know how it couldn't be, but yes, for those few for whom it's not. Yeah.
Sometimes we make plans, but often your destiny just kind of falls in your lap, right?
Yeah. So it's an interesting story. I was a business and marketing consultant for 11 years. Okay. TechnoAid was actually a client of mine.
Okay.
Through a weird series of circumstances, I ended up meeting somebody from TechnoAid because I had previously been in the world of marketing and was with us at a small marketing agency many years ago, also here in the Nashville area, and saw the emergence of social media, which wasn't even called social media at the time.
Right.
Web 2.0, for those who remember, that's what it was called for a stint. And so was doing that. Really felt like something was coming that was fundamentally going to change communications.
Yeah.
So I remember like when the first wave of podcasts first hit many years ago, and it was like the first wave of podcasts.
Oh, I remember that. That was good times.
So I had one with a friend named Nathan.
Did you? What was it about?
New media, social media,
okay,
media and marketing, all the new tools. So I blogged for a long time. I wrote over 1,000 blog posts over the course of several years.
Dang.
And so left the agency and went out on my own. And so I'm pretty sure I was one of the first what we would now call social media like marketing consultants.
Okay.
At least in the Southeast, because it was 2007.
Okay. Wow.
When I started doing that. And it was a terrible year to do that because nobody knew what that was.
Right.
And so I remember showing people. I'd be in a company, conference room or at some like meetings, conventions as things kind of grew, and I was showing people their first YouTube videos. Mm-hmm. I remember explaining Twitter to people.
I wish I could go back in time and
it was interesting. And I remember advertising. One Nashville advertising executive argued with me that Facebook was a fad and it was going to be gone in a couple years.
I've heard that saying a lot.
And I think that was I want to say that was in 2008-ish, maybe late 07, 08. The Obama campaign in 08 really pushed, it kind of brought, like he was the first presidential candidate to do a lot with that. So his whole thing, his candidacy and his campaign brought a lot of sort of
attention,
more public attention to that.
How you could use social media.
And then the economy was bad. And so it sort of, it was actually, the bad economy was actually good for my business because people were interested in finding alternative, affordable ways to do things.
Okay.
And so it freed people up. So that was actually good for business. Again, didn't know that in 2007 when I started. It wasn't thinking I wasn't that strategic. But anyway, just through the years, worked with a bunch of different companies and ended up meeting some folks with TechnoAid and had the chance to work with them for several years.
Yeah.
That ended in 2014, and there's kind of a long, sort of interesting story about that we won't get into today. But like that ended, and then a couple years later, out of the blue, a former owner of the company reached out and said, "Hey, are you interested in having breakfast?" And I said, "Sure." And we got together. And long story short, I ended up getting offered the job of president at the company.
Okay.
And so started in early 2018.
Okay.
And have been there ever since.
So you got offered the job of president.
Yeah.
President in this case means that you own the business, or
so president is not
does that mean?
ownership.
Okay.
So ownership and sort of role within a company.
Yeah.
Short of something you're starting yourself are two pretty different things. And so our company was owned by a couple private equity groups.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
And so the guy who had been the president was also the minority owner
Okay.
of the company. And so he's the one who offered me the job. He was pretty involved with the business. And so he sort of bequeathed upon me the title that he had been carrying.
Yeah.
While still retaining his ownership clearly, in the company.
Okay.
And so that's what I did for a while. And then we had, the business was sort of moving along. And then in March of 2020, the tornado came through Nashville.
I remember you telling me about this.
And the tornado completely demolished our entire facility.
Man.
And so it was the location. It was not the original location of our business, but
Okay.
it was where the company had been for the longest period of time. And so I think they moved in there in the early 80s, 1980s. And so, so they had been there since the 80s and had just sort of like the business had sort of grown and had changed ownership hands and all that over the years in that facility. And in just one, 12:30 a.m. tornado that nobody in Nashville was expecting, it was all gone. I mean, it was a complete and total loss.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to I have not had a lot of tornado experience in my life.
I mean, we all hope not to, right?
And certainly none firsthand.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting when you see something that is a part of your life, and walls are down, and there's water all over the place, from water pipes busting to
catastrophic.
Yeah, like the ceiling. There was a part where the ceiling was only being held up by the storage racks in our warehouse. That was the only thing holding the ceiling up.
That's wild.
And so it was pretty crazy. And so it was a complete and total loss. And there was about a 1 day period where our management team was not sure if the company was even going to continue, because ownership, again, the two private equity firms, frankly had a decision to make. Like, do we want to try to rebuild this, or do we want to just shut it down, call it a day? I mean, that is an option. And so for this brief 24-hour period, while we're trying to figure out just, there's a moment where you're trying to say, like, wait, is it really, like, is it salvageable? Is it as bad as we think it is?
Yeah.
Or is it not? And then when the city comes along and says, oh no, it's gone.
It's total.
And then
we're done.
The insurance guys come along and like, no, it's gone.
Okay.
Then you're like, all right, so what are we going to do now? And and that's when we started to get way more integrated with the majority ownership guys, also who are out in New York, and they're great. And they just said, we believe in you guys. We believe in what you're doing. Like, let's go do this.
Yeah.
And so, after that, it was just sort of full steam ahead. Let's go rebuild this company.
Okay.
And so within 2 days, we had temporary office space secured. Within about a month, we had new warehouse and office space secured, but we had to build that space out.
Yeah.
Obviously had to buy all brand new equipment and all that. And the fun fact is that COVID started 2 weeks later. So COVID descends upon, the U.S. and everybody remembers like those moments when it started to dawn on you that this COVID thing is starting to affect your life.
Yeah.
And things are changing and all that.
Oh, yeah.
So like we were 2 weeks into tornado recovery when that's happening. And so my COVID experience is very different from a lot of people. I was
Okay.
very busy during
Yeah.
COVID.
No,
Now, healthcare professionals were super busy during
Yes.
COVID as well, right? Like, so we know that. Depending on what you did professionally or what you do professionally, you were maybe very not busy.
yeah.
You had a lot of
I was sitting at home a
free
lot.
time, a lot of free time. That was not my experience.
Okay.
We were trying to rebuild a company, and so we were operating out of some temporary space. So we were able to start selling some things that we don't produce ourselves and manufacture ourselves.
Okay.
Within 60 days, that was one goal we had, was can we start selling some product again in 60 days? And we were able to beat that by a few days.
That's awesome.
And then it was like, all right, when can we start progressively bringing things back that we manufacture out of some temporary space? And, ultimately it took a year to just under a year to fully get back, build out the space, move into new offices, get new equipment. And it's an interesting thing when you're buying very expensive equipment.
Yeah.
Because we have a whole metal shop. That's part of what we do as well. So some of the product we produce are metal. So we can powder coat metal and bend and laser metal and all this.
Okay.
So it's not cheap equipment.
I can imagine.
But turns out when you're buying expensive equipment during a global pandemic, you get some good deals.
That's fair.
And so we were in this unique position where we had money from insurance right as everybody's freaking out about a pandemic. 'Cause you remember there was that moment early on in the pandemic when I was like, hey, this will be gone in like 2 weeks.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember? So there was like there was this sort of this brief myth, like in 2 weeks, we're all going to be fine and back to
Right.
normal. And then after those 2 weeks passed, then it's
like,
the
this is
whole
gonna
like,
hang
how
around.
long is this going to last?
Yeah.
It's sort of like the pendulum kind of went the other way. Like, oh, this is going to be forever.
Yeah.
Like, is this going to be the rest of our lives? And so like, it's hard to like,
Felt
we
like
kind of
it.
don't think that way. Like, it's hard to like put our heads back into kind of where we were at that time. And so just as it was clear that the 2 week thing was not real and
Yeah.
this was going to be hanging around for a while, we had money to spend.
Okay.
And so we were able to leverage it very, very well. And so I got to give a lot of credit to our company vice president, friend, and business partner of mine, Aaron Scalf.
Right.
Like he was able to really, and he's a great negotiator, and he was able to negotiate really well. And so we were able to really get the most. Like we were getting some nice discounts on very expensive stuff because very few people were spending
Right.
buying multi six-figure pieces of equipment during
Right.
that time. And so we were able to do, and our former location was not a state-of-the-art facility,
Okay.
shall we say.
So we got some upgrades
A
going
lot of old stuff. The newest equipment we had in that building, we had just installed a very small piece of equipment, but beyond that, like the big machinery, the newest stuff we had was new in like 1987.
here. Okay.
So the idea that in 2020, the best stuff we had was current circa 1987. Some of it went back to the 60s. Gives you a flavor of what we were dealing with
Not optimal.
versus
equipment. Yeah.
what happens when you're buying brand new equipment
Oh, that feels
in
so nice.
2020.
Right.
And you're laying out the space the way you want, and you're trying to work on efficiencies and workflow and all that the way you want.
Yeah.
And so we did a decade's worth of upgrades in less than a year, all thanks to a tornado that just happens to mean we recover during a pandemic. So in business
Wow.
school, they don't tell you that the best way to recover from something like that is that if you're going to have a natural disaster,
Yeah.
you should really plan that
Yeah.
during a global pandemic.
That would be wise.
So that's the takeaway, I think, is that needs to be like, that's the plan.
if you can orchestrate that.
If you can make that happen, that's what you're going for.
I mean, everybody else will hate you, but you'll benefit from it.
So there's very much a sense of like, that's what, you can choose what your attitude's going to be in every situation. And are you going to play the hand you're dealt and try to find a way to make that work?
Yeah.
And so I remember within the first 24 hours or so following the tornado, we were using Aaron's house just because he didn't have kids at the time. So it was the best kind of central location for us to office out of
Okay.
while we were trying to figure out what we were going to do.
Wow.
And I remember one afternoon or that next day, it was just like, hey, this is going to be the best thing that could have happened to us. And Aaron was very much like, yeah, like, let's do this.
That's
and
wild.
Not everybody agreed that was the case, because not everybody necessarily adopts that mindset.
Right.
Or they can see all the negative, and there was plenty of negative to observe. But somewhere you sort of have this like, yeah, I don't want to be blind to reality, but there is something here that we can make work.
Right.
And so that was our approach. And so all of a sudden, this 40-plus-year-old Nashville company that's largely been using outdated equipment based, in West Nashville, is now moved to just north of Nashville in a larger, much nicer facility, fully built out with brand new equipment that is, by the way, completely paid for, in an office space that we design ourselves, fully paid for.
No debt.
Yeah. And so it's just coming along, and then it's about how do we rebuild the company, and then we got to rebuild our business, because we certainly lost business. We had customers, had to go find alternate suppliers. Of course, we had there were different bits of intrigue and former employees doing things that weren't awesome for us, and all this kind of stuff.
You guys lose some employees in the transition?
We lost a few.
Okay.
But you know what? I think it's all a net win.
Yeah.
And there was in loss, you can still win.
Yeah, you can.
And so I think the tornado was a loss of some old things that frankly needed to go. And so we had been trying to change the culture and trying to change some things with the business leading up to it.
Yeah.
And there were no excuses anymore after the tornado. The tornado was the grand sort of definitive, you will change or you will not, move forward.
Okay.
And so fortunately, we had already been for a year plus, positioning the company, sort of trying to change mindset, culture, leadership, a lot of different things were shifting. And at that point, it was just good to see that, like, okay, this shift that had already begun culturally with people now is going to start to happen physically, even with more processes and a lot of things. A lot of things happened during that time. So we had a good team, very good team to help. Let's do this. All of our employees rallied around and stepped up in great ways. So
that's incredible when you have good help.
It shows, when things get hard, people reveal who they are. And it was a very revealing time in a lot of ways. And so, through that season, the minority owner sold his portion, so he got out of the business. So all of a sudden, then we're just dealing with our one equity group out of New York. The majority owner then owned the whole thing.
Okay.
And again, they're great. And so it was just change was happening. But it was all things that it just felt like it was, despite the apparent circumstance, it was happening for our good.
Right.
It was happening to our favor.
Yeah.
And we were winning with what looked at face value as losses.
Yeah, because you obviously could have just said, okay, we're giving up. This thing's over.
Yeah, and so I remember about a year or two later, talking to one of the guys from the ownership group, and reflecting with him. And I said, why did you guys decide to move forward?
I'm glad you asked that question.
Because I didn't think to ask that in the moment, because we're just trying to think about what has to be done. And he said, we knew that when we had our call with you the day after the tornado, the day after the tornado, because it was happening in the middle of the night. He said, the fact that you guys were not curled up in the fetal position in the corner, and we're kind of like, hey, we're ready to do this if you'll back us.
Yeah.
Was all they needed to know, because they said we're in New York, we can't manage this thing from there. They've got a lot of other things going on.
Yeah, they need someone.
So they're
on the
like
ground.
So it really came down to their very quick assessment of us in that moment as to whether the management team had the drive and the energy and the clarity of sight to go and not curl up in the fetal position, which is an option. I mean, we all have choices and how we're going to deal with any one thing that comes along. And so one option, it frankly never occurred to me, but like it is an option. Like looking like cognitively, I know that is an option.
Right.
And so the fact that none of us on the management team considered that as an option. Like we are moving forward. We just need to know that we've got the green light from you guys.
Right.
And so that was it.
That cohesiveness is an important element.
Yeah.
That the management team was already set up and ready to go.
Yeah.
You know, you might go through most of a year. Like I've had a really, decent year for my newer business.
Yeah.
0 hiccups. And sometimes you get a hiccup and then you're like, where did all the great stuff go? It's
Sure.
like you should have just been enjoying it while it happened and been prepared. But, I gave myself a time limit. It was like, all right, you get one afternoon to be upset about this problem.
Yeah.
And then tomorrow you get over it and you work hard.
Yeah.
And that's, a lot of it has to just do, would you say, with a mindset, right?
Yeah. I mean, being self-employed for 11 years, I think did teach me a lot to prepare me for this, which is very different from being the president of a medical device manufacturer with, and we have 30 employees.
Okay, I was going to.
And so, so that's the size. So we're not a big company, but it is very different to do that, and you have all the things that go into that on a daily basis, versus basically managing yourself and maybe a couple contract workers,
right.
or whatever the case may be. It's very very different. And so, interestingly, you spend a lot more time alone as when you're self-employed.
You are so right.
And so so if you can't trust the person you're alone with during all that time,
there's depth there.
You're in trouble.
I've been guilty.
You're spending time with the wrong person.
Yeah.
And so that person needs to make some adjustments.
Oh yeah, I definitely had a come to Jesus moment whenever I got this
with
office.
Yourself.
With myself.
Yeah.
Because I was spending too much time in this office, fiddling around with stuff like ChatGPT and AI, and I'm like, where did the day go?
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't have that accountability, having someone work right next to you.
Yeah.
You have to become that person.
Yeah. And then you have to define what does it mean to be busy?
Yeah.
And then busy doesn't mean productive. And productive doesn't mean profitable.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, productive should mean profitable, but like some people might say, I had a productive day, but they also didn't make any money.
Right.
And unless you're running a nonprofit, then productivity should also include somewhere you're making money in the process.
That should be a part of the definition.
I would think that's part of the deal. It's kind of what you're trying to do there.
Yeah.
Unless you don't need money, So, I think that's where the journey was through self-employment for 11 years. Really kind of prepared me for the tough things that come along, because you have to sort of center. You can't respond and react to the environment around you.
Yeah.
You're not going to persevere. You've got to sort of align yourself with what am I trying to do? What's trying to happen here? What are the values that are important to me?
Yeah.
What am I seeking to do? And then when you get pretty good at assessing yourself, being more honest with yourself, recognizing where you're failing, where you're winning, and how to proceed forward, then you're frankly, you're better positioned to do a lot of things in life.
Yeah.
And then you can apply that to your marriage, your parenting, your volunteer work, like whatever else you do. And so like I manage my health differently now than I would have, say, 15 years ago.
Okay.
Because of just sort of the lessons I've learned. And so like setting goals and knowing myself better, and how do what do I need to do to keep myself motivated? When am I likely to fail? When am I likely to succeed?
Yeah.
And so those are lessons that I learned just through years of self-employment.
Okay. Because you had to set those goals and try to achieve them.
Yeah. So like I know I'm a goal setter, but but I also know I have a tendency toward very lofty goals.
Yeah.
And then I can't remember. I mean, I started many years ago. Started journaling, and so I have notebooks for every year, going back several years. And so, like, this is my 2021 notebook and my 2018 notebook, and I was writing this morning in my 2024 notebook.
Okay.
And so, I'm trying to just kind of chronicle that, and that's a discipline I wanted to develop years ago. And so it's just interesting. It's like you learn yourself, you learn what you need. And so I can look back at so many journals and see like those January goals.
Yeah.
That's when we think about,
when we think about our goals.
We think about our goals.
For the year.
And I remember a couple years, they were so lofty and ridiculous.
Yeah.
And idiotic. And I would even try to track them and like revisit them. Like in March, I'm going to revisit this. And in July, how am I doing?
Yeah.
And then by October, it's like, what was I doing again? Like, I don't even remember.
Yeah, I've gotten lost in the fray.
And then I would go back and look back and like, that was, I mean, I'm not doing that. I'm not even, I haven't thought about that in 4 months.
Yeah.
And so a couple years of that. And when I could catalog and see my failure, like there's something to be said about cataloging your failure, to go back and see like, oh, I cannot revise the history in my head on this, because this is literally my thoughts from a year ago or from 2 years ago or whatever it is. And so it was this stark reality, like, oh, the data from my own words to me, and then what actually happened show me that if I'm going to be successful setting goals, I need short-term,
attainable,
specific goals.
Yeah.
And so specificity is not always my forte.
Okay.
And I've gotten better with that, but I've been a long time suffering generalist who's had to be more specific and be specific and clear and honest, both with yourself and with other people.
Yeah.
And so I think that's part of what's developed there. And so it carries through to this day. And so even how I talk to employees is very much influenced by that. How I think about goals, personal goals, business goals, and I keep things in front of me. So like in my office, I have a whiteboard where I've got a few notes to myself, and they stay there for a long time because it's like these things need to happen by this time.
Okay.
So after I cross that time on the calendar, then those things I'm going to have to assess how we're going. But having it there helps me go, yes.
Keeps the vision straight.
Have I been focused on that this week or today or in the last 48 hours or whatever?
Okay. Yeah, big fan of the whiteboard.
I do love There's a reason why when we built our office space, we have a whole room that's just whiteboard.
Just whiteboard. It's the whiteboard room.
It's the wall. The walls it's the painted, whiteboard.
The whiteboard wall.
So it's just the whole room is whiteboard.
Okay.
Floor to ceiling whiteboard.
Well, let me ask you this. So in the time that you own your business, the marketing one, and now being the president of a company, does mentorship play at all a role for you? Like, do you have outside mentors that look out from outward?
So I have over the years, I've had a fair number of mentors, and I would say less so in this season of the last couple years. But what I would say is some people trade out mentorship for learning. And I think mentorship is just learning, and it's just it's just the friction that comes by sort of clashing and sort of in Proverbs 16:9, as iron sharpens iron, and one man sharpens another.
Yeah.
And the friction that comes with the sharpening of two people interacting with each other, I think is good. So friction typically has a negative connotation. I happen to think friction is a good thing. Friction is what allows your car to move forward when the light turns green. Friction is also what makes it stop when the light's yellow and turning red, assuming you don't blow through that, which, let's be honest, we all do.
I'm trying to make that light.
It's what will eventually stop you when you choose to stop.
Sure.
So friction has a lot of power. It's not negative. And so I think the friction of interacting with anything that helps you learn is good. And so mentorship is valuable. I've had some very good mentors over the years that I'm highly appreciative of. But I think the question for me is, am I in situations where there's just the friction of having to deal with other people and having to learn? And so I read a lot of books, I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and there's friction there. So like the other night, I was couldn't sleep. I was reading, and I was like, the friction of some of the ideas that were in there were good and got me thinking.
Right.
That could have happened if I were being mentored by that author.
Sure.
But if you think about
I
it, a
agree.
book is a brief mentorship under the tutelage of that particular author.
Yeah, that can be a valuable
And so
tool for
if
sure.
you're willing to use it, especially now with audiobooks that you can kind of take anywhere, if you're willing to engage it,
Oh, yeah.
you can do that. And I would say too, Aaron, who's my business partner, like he and I interact a lot. And so I think we almost have a natural iron sharpening iron type of relationship with each other.
He kind of
as well.
balances you.
Yeah. I mean, we're very similar in some ways. We're very not similar in other ways. And so he's quick to say, hey, you messed that up. And then I'll say, I mean, everybody loves it when somebody tells them that.
It's their favorite thing. I'm telling you.
And he's not known to be the most compassionate person at first. He's actually got tons of heart, but he doesn't appear that way
Right.
at first.
I'm familiar with him.
Yes, but he, but I appreciate it. I really like that. And so there is that level of relationship. And so I have other relationships with people who ask questions, offer perspective.
Yeah.
And so when people think about mentorship, it's sort of like this: you got one person here and one person here, and this person's teaching this person. It's like the master and the Jedi type of perspective. And I think there's a lot to be said, particularly early on for younger professionals. I mean, I just turned 48, so I'm not a young professional anymore. Turns out, apparently, I think my kids would happily tell me I'm not young. I mean, now that I have a child that has a 2, her age starts with a 2. All right, so I got to admit what's up. So mentorship, I think it can be more like peer mentorship, just because you're putting yourself in a situation where there's friction and challenge. Like, do you have anybody challenging you? I think is really to me that's what I'm looking for. If I found if I had a guy who's say 65, 70 years old and he's been through a lot of stuff, I'd love that. I mean, that's great. And I do have some men like that. So I do have some of that in my life, but not a ton. It's mostly more peer relationships.
Peer relationships.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I would say the mentorship box is getting checked
Yeah.
in a less intuitive way.
Okay. But early on, it was helpful in your development.
For sure. There's a lot to be said about having coffee with people, having a common group of people that you spend time with, talking to people who are 5, 10, 15 years down the road from where you are, learning from people who are successful. And I would say there are a lot of people who also are faking it.
Till they make it.
Well, but they're
just in
faking
general.
their success.
Oh,
So
yeah.
they're faking. I saw this early on and I sort of intuited it, but I didn't see it more clearly till later. But early on, you have people who appear to be successful.
Right.
So they're like let's just say a step ahead of you or 2 steps ahead of you, not like way down the road, but a step or 2 ahead of you. And then when you start to pull back the veneer a little bit, you're like, I don't think they know what they're doing.
Right.
And it doesn't matter that they may have won some award, or they could have written some piece that got some publicity, or maybe they wrote a book or like whatever. Like, just because somebody's done some of those things doesn't mean that they're necessarily wise, helpful, a good mentor. And so I think there are plenty of people you've never heard of that are probably better mentors than those who maybe get the love.
Speaking of which, what was the book you've most recently been reading that's been challenging you? You mentioned.
Yeah, so it's Peter Thiel's book.
Okay.
I think it's called 0 to 1.
0 to
is the
1.
name of
Okay.
it. And a friend of mine gifted it to me and said, "Hey, this is good. You should check it out." I've I've started to read some more like military books, like memoirs from generals and that sort of thing, which is interesting. And then I tend to revisit some books from time to time. And so there's a book I come back to a lot called Compelling People.
Okay.
And there's a grid, kind of the premise of the book. It talks about operating out of two characteristics, which are strength and warmth. And I use that a lot with employees in their development as well. So I do circle back around to that.
Okay.
Also,
That's a good tip.
so I just finished a book. Aaron suggested this one. It's called Predictable Success. So we're actually implementing some things with that within our business. So
Yeah, we'll put the links
there's always multiple
in the description to those.
I've got a friend named Randy who just told me I got to read something about Amazon, that he just recommended. I don't even know what the title of it is. He's like, you need to read this. It's going to blow your mind. And so we'll see. I don't know.
That's awesome.
It may.
So speaking of like the specifics of your business, like we're selling, medical equipment.
Yep.
I mean, you're not going to like networking events with, Connect Nashville or, where do you meet the people?
They don't care.
Yeah.
So we sell products worldwide.
Okay.
And so there are industry events that are the places for us to connect. But we sell through distributor networks.
Okay.
And so we have a network of equipment dealers and distributors that are primarily our customers. So, for instance, an HCA hospital here in Nashville or a Vanderbilt hospital, they can buy from us.
Okay.
They do buy some, but very, very little.
Okay.
Most of our sales go through these distributors. And so we have to go where they are.
Yeah.
And so there are different events around the country through the year.
Like medical events, conventions, those sorts of things.
Yeah, specifically for
trade shows.
For the radiology industry.
Okay. Because I would imagine like it's tough to find the executives or the right decision makers to pull the trigger on some of those products.
Particularly when you deal with medical devices that are accessories. Like you're not even like nobody's going to get an X-ray of a broken arm with anything that we sell. But the X-ray tech will be protected. Like he or she will be protected from the exposure to X-ray from the products that we make.
Yeah.
So our products are mostly not even for the patients. They're for the medical professionals.
Okay.
And so our products are mostly for imaging, positioning. Positioning the image properly.
I saw some like wedges and stuff.
Or positioning the patient. Right. So
patient.
that's positioning. So that can mean a few different things, or it's for protection. So it's protection and positioning.
Okay.
Again, super riveting stuff. The things that dreams are made of, and so it's interesting because I would have never thought I would get into this. I find it interesting as just the business of it.
Yeah,
is very interesting, and sort of understanding the industry. There are a lot of things within our industry that have just sort of been done a certain way for a very long time. I think we have shown a propensity to not feel the need to follow the mold, and that we can come at things very differently from the way we size customers to make sure they get the right fit for what they're doing, or how we're going to approach some software that we have to sort of have for our products, or just the way we relate to the dealers and distributors, different from the way competitors do.
Yeah. Now, was the distribution network pre-existing whenever you guys entered?
Yeah, I mean, it's really been sort of the sales foundation of the company.
Okay.
It's how many of our competitors operate as well. So there are a few who have built sales teams.
Okay.
Over the years, and that has been sort of a sticking point within the industry is, are we as a manufacturer going to go stay with the distributor model, or are we going to build our own sales team?
Okay.
And we have chosen strategically, and again, kind of relationally to kind of where you're going, to stay with our distributors.
Right, okay.
And support them. There are pros and cons with that, but it's the path that we have chosen, and we chose that a couple of years ago, and we're staying with that.
Okay.
And so it is interesting where you have other companies that we compete with who kind of want to do both, but the margins you can imagine are going to be way better when your own salespeople are selling directly for
Yeah.
you. And
Yeah.
so I think it sounds nice to say that you're going to like play nice with the distributors, but also you've got a sales team who's
Right.
out there. But they may also go and undercut your distributor, and so you can imagine all the messiness that's there.
Causing
And
conflict.
we just have chosen like let's just be clear on what we're trying to do here, and let's just go all in on trying to get better with that.
No, I love that.
So, which again is kind of counterintuitive within the industry. A lot of our, I would say most of our competitors, particularly in our protective apparel department, are protective apparel side of the industry, are trying the multi sales approach. Like, let's have distributor relationships, but also we're going to build a sales team.
Okay.
I totally get why they're doing it. We're just choosing not to do that.
I mean, yeah, margins are attractive whenever they're in your favor. So I've been to your facility.
Yeah.
And I've definitely seen, especially them making the lead vests to protect the X-ray techs and people. But I've also seen two other things. So you mentioned one, which was the powder coating with the metal.
Yeah.
And then you have a box machine as well.
Now,
are these like side hustles, side projects for the business? Or?
Well, the box machine is it's there for sheer practicality.
Okay. For shipping your products and stuff.
Don't oversell it. Don't get too excited.
It looks cool.
The box machine is pretty cool, actually. So it was something that we were actually in the process of trying to get in our old facility prior to the tornado.
Yeah.
But we ship a ton of products. We have a ton of shipments every single day.
Yeah.
So hundreds of boxes are leaving our facility. And so in our old location, we had to have, think of all the different things we make, require their own box size for efficiency and to kind of get the best rates.
Yeah.
So we had all these boxes that we ordered from box manufacturing companies.
Right.
We had racks and racks full of just stacked corrugate for this type of box and this type of box and this type of box.
Yeah.
And so turns out you can get your own on-demand box making machine. And that's what's available. And so it just has three flavors, if you will, of corrugate.
Yeah.
And you punch in to the screen what size and shape and all that you need. And within about 4 seconds, you've got your box blank and you're off and running.
Oh my gosh.
And so that, while being cool, I agree. Like it's fun to see and it's fun to watch. It saves us $50,000 a year. And so it's more efficient and that sort of thing because you're not having to order boxes, because you've got some minimum order quantity that you're only going to use,
and hope the customers
7 times, every year or whatever.
Yeah.
Or like you misjudged, like that product didn't go well, or like that box is less efficient than we want it to be or whatever. And now you've got a pallet full of corrugate. And so, again, tornado like wiped the slate clean on that.
Yeah.
And so we started fresh. But then on the metal shop side, so when you come into our facility, like if you go out sort of the door from the office to the plant, like the left side is all the soft goods. I kind of call it the soft goods because it's where we do a variety of the sewing, the table pads. We got sand-based products that are used in certain procedures. Mm-hmm. And so that's on one side, and the metal side of the house, the metal goods. And so the laser, the forming machines, the powder coat paint line. We have a robotic welder. We've got manual welding booths. Like it's a full-on business. And so we had a lot of that equipment in our former location, but it was very old, not particularly accurate or efficient things. And so just in the laser and the two press machines we have, the press being what bends metal, those 3 machines replaced 17 machines from our old spot. So just think about
the efficiency.
The efficiency, and so it's not only more efficient, it's more accurate.
Using less space.
So less space, more accurate, faster, more precise. Like there's no downside to that.
Yeah, big win.
And so we have that, and then we have our powder coat paint line, which is a huge upgrade from our previous. It's automatic and sort of 10-gun robot, throwing powder at it and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. And so so we were able to we've gotten so efficient at that, we've been able to spin that out into its own sort of secondary business. Okay. And so we do offer metal fabrication services. Yeah. And so we have a whole website for that separate from Yeah.
From
so
TechnoAid?
separate from TechnoAid. So technoaid.com, techno-aid with an E, AIDE,
Okay.
.com is our main website, which is all the medical devices.
Okay.
But then tametalfab.com,
Okay.
TA Metal Fab is where we just feature all of the medical, all the metal processing
Okay.
that we can do, and it's services for hire.
What's an example of like an order you guys have gotten for the medical or for the metal side?
Metal,
We
yeah.
both
So that's
fumbled
where
that
medical
word.
and metal,
Metal
yeah.
and medical, man.
Yeah. So we have done projects for Amazon distribution centers.
Yeah.
At one point, we were powder coating these 10-foot long posts that are used to basically let a 2-story Amazon distribution center, like it would sort of build this spiral, so boxes could spiral down from one floor to the next. So we were in charge of the posts and powdering the posts and some components that go with that.
Okay.
And then the way we would ship them, looked like we were shipping missiles out of our facility. The way they're stacked like 3 by 3. And they had these flares on the ends of them because of how they were mounted to the ground. It looked like we were shipping missile components, which is kind of awesome. So we've done things like that. We've done work for a bunch of kiosks for Dollar General stores.
Okay.
We're doing some work for a small company called Lowe's right now.
I like how you casually.
Yeah, we've done some work for FedEx, and so it's a wide variety of things. We've done like small one-off, like somebody needs some signage.
Yeah.
Done. There's a company in town. Somebody needs some signs cut for them. So like, yeah, sure, we can cut some signs. So like we have aluminum signs around our facility, and we did them all in house because we can. And so so that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
And again, we couldn't have done that and wouldn't have built that out except for the fact that the tornado, gave us that opportunity.
Yeah.
And so we continue to press on.
What's the future look like for TechnoAid and TA Metal Fab? What are the goals?
TA Metal Fab. So the metal fabrication side of the house, we want to it's very feast or famine.
Okay.
And so we can get some great work there, and then we can be very, very quiet for a long period of time. And so I think winning there is just finding ways to stay busier more consistently. And so we have some interesting opportunities right now. For the first time, we're quoting out products where it's like, hey, can you guys powder coat 700,000 pieces? And
that's a lot of
over
pieces.
the course of a year. Like, well, yeah, we can, but we got to rethink some things to do that, And but we're getting some opportunities now as our network continues to expand. So that's interesting to see kind of what's happening there. And that type of work where we can have sort of this steady eddy, like every month, here's another X number of thousand pieces for this that you're going to do. And, then do we create probably a second shift or like whatever we got to do for that.
Right.
But there's some predictability in that. And so that's what we're hoping for on that side of the house. And really it's the core business is TechnoAid, as in the medical imaging. We're having a very good year. We want to keep growing.
That's awesome.
We're trying to, what we did have to kind of get over, and this actually was starting before the tornado, is that there was a lot of internal mythology about where our company stood relative to the industry.
Okay.
And I remember early on, various employees telling me that we were a leader in the industry. And the numbers would not have indicated that we were a leader unless it's a very, very small market.
Yeah.
Like global market. And it was like, that doesn't add up.
Okay.
But then I said, well, how big's the market? And like, I don't know. Like nobody knew.
No clue?
No, we had no clue at all.
Yeah.
And so it took time to sort of, one, verify.
Okay.
And quantify. And then convince, like, hey, y'all have been believing a lie for a very long time.
Right.
And we can't move forward unless you start to see reality.
Okay.
And so that process was changing before the tornado, and then the tornado comes, and then we have to all the reconfiguring and all that. Meanwhile, our industry's changing a lot. There's various acquisitions, private equity starting to come into the industry a lot more, and changing the nature of it dramatically. And so there's a lot of moving parts, but ultimately that was about trying to make sure we change some cultural things, to make sure we're all on the same page.
They say the culture of a business, like a very large ship, turns very slowly.
Yeah, and we're not a big company.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine what's involved in a 500 person company or a 3,000 person company.
Yeah. Now you guys do meetings and stuff in the mornings to like.
Yeah, we do. I mean, so that part of the culture is that we need people to know what's going on,
right?
And we're not going to. So communication is a core value, for instance.
Okay.
I think everybody's got a core value that's communication, but what we want is communication that's candid and often.
Okay.
And so we force ourselves to have a meeting every day where we're sharing data about how the previous day went, what's going on, what are some things coming down the pike, who's coming to visit, what are some big sales initiatives going on, what's a problem that we're having with a machine, in the shop or whatever the case may be. And so every morning, we get a good number of our folks together, and we go through that. And it can be as short as 5 minutes. It can take up to 30 minutes. It just kind of depends on what's going on. And that's very helpful. That was not something that was common, when I remember going to a meeting because at the former location, the offices were upstairs and the plant was downstairs.
Yeah.
And so you had literal upstairs and downstairs people, and upstairs and downstairs
the divide,
rivalries, and tension and all of this stuff. And so like that was another thing. Like we gotta stop that. Like that is not going to work.
Poisonous, toxic.
Yeah.
So
it's just like, this is not good. And so we had even leaders at one point that were perpetuating that, which again, not good. So that's all part of the shift, the cultural shift that was already in motion prior to the tornado. But communication is key. So we meet every morning and we go through things. We have a monthly company-wide meeting where we share with our employees, all employees, regardless of who they are, the state of the company, the performance of the company from the prior month, how we are doing relative to goals, how we're progressing as the year goes. So, we're sitting here now. We're in the fourth quarter of the year. So there's a lot to kind of look back at now at this point, and start to look ahead, like what's coming. Are things good? Are things bad? Should you be concerned? Should you not be concerned? We talk about profitability. We have a program where we share our profit every month. We share a percentage of profit with our entire employee base.
Okay.
And so that gets talked about in this meeting. So if there's profit to share, that's the meeting where we talk about it. And then we talk about, we share the calculation, like how it goes. So like, we don't have to get into it all the time now because we've done it enough.
Right.
But like from the early on, we were like, let's show everybody how this happens. Check our math if you want to, you know, and then this is how it's going to work.
Oh, that's really cool.
And so it's very interesting when people begin to believe that they hear what you say, they see that you're doing what you say, and then they start to benefit from that. They don't want to go anywhere. And so it took us some time because of just the state of the business to sort of be able to connect all the dots for them, because a lot of people, some people can hear you, but until you're able to back that up, they're like, I hear you, but I don't really know if I believe it.
Right.
And so this is the first year finally where we've been able to really string it all together over many consecutive months and say, this is how it's supposed to be working.
That's awesome.
And they're like, yeah, I like that. And so we've been able to give, we've given a lot of money away this year.
Yeah.
We've given over 6 figures away in profit share to our employees.
So
already this year,
that profit is going directly to
the employees.
Those employees.
Yeah.
That's a huge element for buy-in.
Yeah.
That gives them a great incentive to continue helping make sure the profits stream.
And again, it's not like we got a lot of employees.
Right.
So you can start to think through the math on like what that can mean to individuals.
And then do they make are most of them salary or hourly or?
Yeah, so most of our office staff are salary. Most of our plant staff, unless they're like at supervisor type level, are hourly.
Okay.
But the profit share is the same for everybody.
So it doesn't discriminate.
It doesn't
It's
discriminate over, the lady who's getting paid $17-18 an hour.
Yeah.
And say somebody in the office who's getting paid, a nice salary.
Okay.
And we call it take home cash.
Okay.
So every month we call it take home. Early on, it got abbreviated THC, which didn't seem like, hey, what's our THC? Do I get some THC this month? Like, that's not
my THC.
yeah.
handout.
Like company gave me some THC this
that.
month. Like that's not going to work for us. And so we just say it. But what we found out early on, again, like not everybody is highly educated.
Yeah.
At our company, and that's fine. And so communication being key is if we're trying to be transparent and communicate well, we can't. It is my responsibility to make sure they understand what we're doing. And so if I remember a couple months we were talking about monthly profitability, and it was pretty clear like they don't know what this is.
Yeah.
Even though it's intended to benefit them.
Yeah.
And so we kind of rebranded it to take home cash. There's not, you know what?
Well, now you have my
It
attention.
doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah.
But if you tell me that there's something called take home cash,
I'm at that meeting.
and
I'm engaged.
and I'm the beneficiary of something called take home cash,
Yeah.
I'm going to listen.
Yeah. Exactly.
Nobody's not going to listen.
Yeah.
To, would you like some take home cash?
Yes, sir.
Yes, please. Right?
I'll take 2
And
of those.
so that's we always end these meetings to talk about take home cash.
Yeah.
And is there take home cash? And
Okay.
Upon what numbers is it based?
Yeah.
And all of that. And so so that's all part of that whole thing.
Yeah, I had some good mentorship from my brother-in-law who owns a tennis academy, and he definitely keeps his coaches and assistant coaches very much like invested through the financial investment, and that spoke a lot to me. So when we had hired someone for a little while to help us with editing, if the customer or client came back with no corrections on the edit, he would get a certain bonus,
that's great.
amount depending upon the size of the project. And that was like, okay, let's make sure that we're turning in good work. And I found that to be a little bit more helpful than being like, come on, man, you got to do this, or you should know to do that. It was more proactive on his part for the quality control rather than me having to come back and double check everything.
Yeah, and I mean, my wife owns her own business as well, so she's got Nashville Home Organizers, and sometimes their clients. She's got a team of 6 or 7 people, and sometimes she's not at every job, and sometimes their customers tip the team, and if she wasn't there, she's not taking part of that. She's like, yeah, that tip is for those 2 ladies who spent, a day and a half at that guy's house.
Exactly.
And so it's like, yeah, that's theirs. And so it's one thing to say you're going to be generous. It's one thing to say, like, we value our employees. And I mean, there's no kind of company mission statement that doesn't have some flavor of that.
Yeah.
It's another thing to actually do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to do it in a tangible, consistent way that's not overly complicated. I mean, there's all sorts of incentive programs. I know of a company right now that has changed their sales incentive program 4 times this calendar year already, and that sounds pretty terrible to be a salesperson at that company.
Yeah, because they keep moving the goalposts.
Yeah. I mean, you're not getting any buy-in.
Yeah,
with that,
because they're just going to assume that you're going to change the incentive next week.
Yeah, and so to be consistent, to be clear, keep it pretty simple.
Okay.
Keep it understandable, and then actually do it.
Okay.
I remember we had a former management team member who, when we were starting to get some profitability, and it was the first time we had gotten we were going to give away a pretty healthy amount of money.
Yeah.
In a month. This was a couple years ago.
Yeah.
So this was in our new facility. So a couple years ago, and he's like, hey, if we keep doing this, that means we will have given away in profit share this much money over the year. And he's like, I feel like we should probably like cap this at some point or like something like that.
Yeah.
And it was pretty quickly like, no,
Yeah.
That's the opposite of what we're trying to do here.
Right. Talk about a
Like,
demotivator.
why would we say we want you to work really hard and it's uncapped until it's capped?
Right.
Like, so the idea that there's like a sky's the limit opportunity,
Yeah.
and that if one side of the business is successful and the other one's struggling, but we can all still win from the growth and success, and that's all part of it.
Yeah.
So that's how we structured it, and it is working.
That's awesome. Well, I've really appreciated hearing about your business.
You bet.
And we've got to dig a little deeper into your story than the first time I heard it.
Yeah.
So this was extremely beneficial for me as
Yeah.
a newer business owner on my second year. And so I hope that you guys can get some of those truth nuggets out there and apply some of these tactics and techniques to get buy-in from your employees, or just be really communicative with your the people you're trying to sell to. We appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Bill.